welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. Samsung Electronics is expected to receive some $6 billion of subsidies from the U.S. as part of the CHIPS Act. With the official announcement likely to be made in the coming weeks, it is set to help fund the expansion beyond Samsung's project in Texas. Professors at 24 of South Korea's medical schools nationwide are currently holding a meeting to decide whether to collectively resign. Those at 3 major schools have already signaled their intent to resign. In Russia, the voting to decide on the next president has started, which will continue for 3 days, but the winner is almost certain. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. Washington is expected to announce big subsidies for chip makers by the end of March under its CHIPS Act. And South Korea's Samsung Electronics is likely to receive some $6 billion. With this, the Korean chip maker could expand its investment in the U.S. beyond the plant in Texas. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off. The U.S. is expected to provide more than $6 billion to Korea's leading chip maker, Samsung Electronics, based on the CHIPS Act. This is according to a Bloomberg report that the Commerce Department's announcement to give federal funding to not only Samsung Electronics, but also its rival TSMC would be made in a few weeks. The Taiwanese chipmaker is reportedly to receive at least $5 billion, while Intel is expected to receive $10 billion in both subsidies and loans. The grant is widely forecast to come alongside Samsung's plan to invest more in the U.S., although the details have yet to be revealed. The company has already announced a $17 billion project in Taylor, Texas, near its already existing plant in Austin. Experts say the fundamental reason behind providing such subsidies is because the U.S. lacks the capacity to mass produce the chips it needs.
Because the United States has so little producing capacity, in the interest of national security, they are trying to build up production capacity, and for that, they need help of major global producers of semiconductors like Samsung.
The subsidy for Samsung does not come for free, though. One condition of getting it was limiting chip business expansion in China under guardrail proposal, which restricts the expansion of production there by more than 5% for advanced chips. Samsung may have to brace itself for this year, as the U.S. presidential candidates could toughen up measures against China to win the election. But the expert says these could be loosened once this is over.
For this year, I think the best that Samsung can hope for is that current restrictions does not get worse, but after the elections, they may be able to loosen some of the restrictions because in the end, a lot of the Chinese-made products are going to the United States, and if there are too many American restrictions, then products going to the United States, the prices will rise.
As preliminary as the pending announcement is, the fine details of the final decision could change. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News. On the local front, professors from 3 major medical schools have reportedly decided to resign en masse on condition to protest the government's reform plan, while those from more than a dozen are weighing up whether to follow suit. After a meeting today, an announcement is due tomorrow morning. Yoo Eun-hee has the latest.
Professors from 24 of South Korea's roughly 40 medical schools are deciding whether or not to collectively hand in their resignations. An emergency response committee of professors went into an online discussion starting at 7 p.m. on Friday. The professors say they'll announce their decision by 10 a.m. on Saturday. So far, among the so-called Big Five hospitals in Seoul, professors at Seoul National University, the University of Ulsan, and Catholic University have finalized their decision to submit resignation letters if the government takes any legal action, such as suspending the licenses of junior doctors. Meanwhile, the Health Ministry on Friday morning urged the professors not to resign.
The government once again urges the junior doctors to come back to the field for the public and for their co-workers. Doctors can be respected when they stay with the patients.
Some of the general hospitals which filled vacancies left by the departures of most junior doctors with professors are now under emergency response measures. Seoul National University Bundang Hospital is now only carrying out emergency surgeries due to a lack of doctors, and the number of surgeries has decreased by about 30 to 50% compared to before. During a briefing on Friday, the government thanked the medical personnel who have stayed at work.
While the severity and emergency indicators in the medical field are stable so far, the government is considering the public's inconvenience when using medical services and the exhausted medical staff still doing their duty very seriously.
The current conflict was sparked by the government's plan to increase medical school enrollment by 2,000 places starting in 2025. Doctors say that an expanded quota cannot be a fundamental solution for long-standing issues, like a shortage of essential medical services such as pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology. The government said the quota increase is inevitable, as South Korea currently has just 2.6 doctors per 1,000 people, far below the OECD average of 3.7, and that it is needed to resolve regional healthcare disparities. The government unveiled the allocation plan for the new quota on Thursday, with 80% of new med school spots going to schools outside the capital region. Lee In-hee, Arirang News.
The latest assessment by the Korean government sees recoveries in exports and employment, but deems private spending and investment in construction sluggish. Lee Soo-jin has details.
South Korea's economy is showing a patchy recovery. That's according to the latest Economic Green Book, a monthly economic assessment report released Friday by the Finance Ministry.
There have been improvements in manufacturing, production, exports and employment, but parts of the economy are recovering at different paces as private consumption and construction investment remain sluggish and inflation high.
Production in the manufacturing industry in January was up nearly 14% on year, led by a more than 40% increase in chip production. As for the country's exports, there was an on-year increase of nearly 5%, with 6 out of 15 major export items such as semiconductors and ships all going up. And employment figures in February also remain solid, with the employment rate for those aged 50 and above standing at 61.6%, up half a percentage point compared to the previous year. But the nation's economy continues to grapple with high inflation as well as sluggish private consumption and construction investment. South Korea's consumer prices were up 3.1% on year last month due to higher prices of oil as well as fruit and vegetables after falling below the 3% mark in January. Prices of agricultural goods were up more than 20% from the previous year due to adverse weather conditions in major production areas. And unstable international oil prices meant domestic oil prices were also up. Amid the continued high inflation, retail sales, a key gauge of private spending in January, rose slightly, up 0.8% from the previous month, but dropped more than 3% on year. And investment in construction in the first month of the year dropped 5.6% compared to a month earlier. The ministry said uncertainties remain due to geopolitical risks like the ongoing war in Ukraine and the regional conflicts in the Middle East. As such, the government plans to continue to focus on improving domestic demand by implementing key policy tasks identified during livelihood policy discussions with citizens. The ministry added that there is also growing anticipation for recovery in the IT industry and a soft landing for the global economy. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The government and the ruling People Power Party have agreed to provide emergency funding of 150 billion Korean won, or around 113 million US dollars, beginning March 18th to stabilize the prices of farm products. Interim PPP leader Han Dong-hoon said on Friday that the government funding will help cap the wholesale prices of 21 selected grocery items, including apples and pears. As a result, the government will pay up to 4,000 Korean won, or around $3 per kilogram of the product's wholesale prices. It'll also expand discount voucher programs for agricultural products and offer more frequent discounts on meat. And ahead of April's general election, relevant authorities are working to ensure that Korea's multicultural families who are eligible to vote will seek to exercise their rights. Lee Si-hoo explains.
The room is filled with a solemn atmosphere as people take their ballots. This is a mock vote organized by the National Election Commission to help women who have immigrated to South Korea better understand the country's election process. At a multicultural family center in Cheongdong-gu district in eastern Seoul, a group of women learn about the Korean political system ahead of the upcoming general election.
We guide multicultural voters on the importance of participating in elections and how to vote so that they can properly exercise their political participation. We expect that experiencing the entire process of voting in person at a mock polling station, equipped like an actual polling station, will help them experience the precious value of voting and exercise their precious right to vote in future elections.
As wives, mothers, and citizens of the country, migrant women themselves highlight the importance of voting in their new home.
Especially for the foreigners who migrate or who got married with the Koreans, we have to do our duty in this country also, and for the future of our kids. And for this country also, I want, or if it is good also, that we have to give more importance with the foreigners, because they're giving more childbirth in this country.
I wasn't a Korean citizen in the past, but I am now. Since I am a Korean citizen, I must take part in the ballot, of course.
In South Korea, there are around 300,000 women from other countries who have moved here for marriage. Of them, over half have become naturalized Korean citizens. Professor Woo Young-ok, who studies migration policy, says every voice of these women matters.
Not only does their participation in the election enable the expression of minority opinions, but it can also greatly help reflect in policies the issues and room for improvement in our multicultural society where people from different countries coexist.
And it's important that society acknowledge their contributions.
The fact is, they are Korean. They are the citizens of the country. So the term naturalized foreigner is an inappropriate combination of words to describe them. Even if they consider themselves Korean citizens, our society tends to think that they are foreigners if they look a little different or speak a little differently. But they contribute to our society as citizens. And when we recognize their contribution, their level of self-respect and identity will also change little by little.
The 22nd general election of South Korea will take place on April 10th. Let's remember that the stamp on the ballot does not reflect the skin of our color or accent in our speech, just our views and expectations for the future of the country. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
In other news, the third summit for democracy kicks off next Monday. South Korea is the host this time around, and with the theme of democracy for future generations. According to the top office on Friday, the leaders' plenary will be on its last day on Wednesday. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen will host the first one on inclusive society and youth empowerment. President Yoon is second on technology, elections, and fake news, and Kenya's William Ruto will go third with the Global South and governance partnership. The virtual summit will also have a ministerial-level roundtable and a number of events hosted by civil society during the first 2 days. And on this occasion, the top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. are set to meet and discuss ways to strengthen cooperation. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol and his American counterpart Antony Blinken are scheduled to meet over lunch on Monday. Secretary of State Blinken is set to arrive in Seoul the day before for a session of the Third Summit for Democracy. The two officials last held a meeting less than a month ago in Washington. Seoul's foreign ministry says their frequent meetings show a strong alliance between the two countries. Blinken then plans to visit the Philippines after wrapping up his trip to Seoul. In Russia, the voting to decide on the next president is underway, which will continue for 3 days. But the winner is almost certain. Kim Jong-sil has this report.
It's presidential election day in Russia, and we already know the probable winner. President Vladimir Putin. The election, which will last until Sunday, could provide Putin with a sense of reassurance that he seeks over the war with Ukraine.
The polls suggest that Putin's win is a sure thing and that he will win with a more than 80% approval rating. In this case, he may continue the war in Ukraine with more confidence.
More than 112 million Russians over the age of 18 are eligible to vote from Friday, along with 1.9 million Russians living overseas.
The question is how many people vote. I mean, we know his approval rating can mount to 86%. It's the voting rate that will be more important this time.
Another takeaway from this election is that residents in the 4 regions of Ukraine occupied by Russia, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, are casting their votes. With the election giving momentum to Putin and his policies, experts say he may want to use this opportunity to conclude the war with Ukraine.
Putin may feel it'd be burdensome to drag the war out as he plans to start something new with a new term. I think if the US or Ukraine are prepared, Putin may want an opportunity to potentially end the war.
Putin's renewed leadership would also impact the dynamics on the Korean peninsula, with Moscow and Pyongyang rapidly boosting ties in recent months.
If Russia further strengthens its ties with the North while distancing itself from the South, it will have a huge impact on South Korea's national security and stability on the Korean peninsula.
Experts added it's important for the South Korean government to come up with measures to cope with Putin's new term, while further preparing for the outcome of the U.S. presidential election in November. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
The top legislator in the U.S. Senate, Chuck Schumer, called for a leadership shakeup in Israel while criticizing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry says at least 29 people died in apparent Israeli attacks. Jung Eun-ju has the latest.
U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer delivered a speech on the Senate floor on Thursday, saying that Israel must make significant course corrections to achieve lasting peace with the Palestinians. He also criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a major obstacle to peace in the Middle East and called for new leadership in Israel.
I believe that to achieve that lasting peace, which we so long for, Israel must make some significant course corrections.
Senator Schumer, a Jewish-American Democrat who has long supported Israel, said it would be a grave mistake for Israel to reject a two-state solution and urged negotiators in the Israel-Gaza conflict to do everything possible to secure a ceasefire and get aid into Gaza. He further criticized Palestinians who support the militant group Hamas. The speech marks one of the most direct and biting speeches given by a high-ranking U.S. political leader during the war's first 5 months. In response, a U.S. Department of State spokesperson said to reporters on Thursday that Schumer's comments were his own and did not represent the stance of the administration. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry said Thursday that at least 29 Palestinians were killed while awaiting aid in 2 separate Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip. In the first incident, Palestinian health officials said 8 people were killed in an airstrike on aid distribution centers in the Gaza Strip. Gaza's health ministry later said at least 21 people were killed and more than 150 wounded by Israeli gunfire at a crowd awaiting aid trucks at a northern Gaza roundabout.
Israel's military in a statement denied attacking aid centers, describing the reports as false. The Gaza conflict has displaced most of the enclave's 2.3 million population. 정은주, Arirang News.
In sports, the Los Angeles Dodgers arrived in South Korea on Friday afternoon for next week's Major League Baseball regular season opener. That includes Japanese star Shohei Ohtani, who recently signed the largest MLB contract of all time. The Dodgers are set to take on the San Diego Padres, who arrived in Korea in the early hours of Friday morning. The Padres have two South Korean stars on their books, Kim Ha-sung and Go Woo-seok. The first ever MLB regular season matches to be held in Korea will take place at Gocheok Sky Dome in Seoul on March 20th and 21st. Prior to the season opener, the two teams will play exhibition games against the Kihyun Heroes and the LG Twins and the South Korean national baseball team. And on the cultural front, recent data from the Korea Tourism Organization showed that of the 11 million overseas tourists who visited the country last year, more than 1/3 were 30 years or younger. The Harvard-Radcliffe Orchestra from the United States is among them. It's currently touring Korea until next Monday. Our correspondent Song Yu-jin spoke with some orchestra members on why they chose Korea this time and what we can expect.
It's the oldest orchestra in the United States. With a history spanning over 2 centuries, the Harvard-Radcliffe Orchestra is composed of more than 100 Harvard University students. And while they may be students, their performances do not fall behind those of professional musicians. Since 1962, the HRO has been touring worldwide, gracing stages in over 18 countries across 4 continents. This year, they're back in Korea, a country close to their hearts and one they last visited in 2015.
Very good and collaborative relationship with Korea. We have a lot of alumni who are here in Korea. A lot of our students are Koreans or with Korean heritage. Korea is, of course, a particularly good place from a classical music standpoint. It's very advanced, which makes it a much more rewarding experience.
For these young musicians, touring isn't just about playing to bigger crowds. It's a chance to harmonize with diverse cultures, creating a symphony of understanding.
Yeah, just to have a lot of collaboration across different cultures and across with a unified vision of that music can bring people together, whether we speak the same language as I was saying before, or whether we're from different places.
This is my first time in the country, even though I guess I am Korean, 100% Korean. I've never been to Korea. I've never even been to Asia, and it's been great just kind of exploring what the culture is like here and get.
Their Seoul concert, which kicked off the orchestra's tour, was all about inclusion and harmony. Together with Korea's Beautiful Mind Orchestra, which is comprised of students with disabilities, they performed Arirang Fantasy, a variation of the Korean folk song Arirang, and Mambo by the late Leonard Bernstein, a distinguished Harvard alum.
It makes me feel proud when I play the violin.
I can touch people through music and give them hope. Playing the flute gives me hope and confidence because it makes me feel that I can also do something meaningful.
The Harvard-Radcliffe Orchestra strikes a chord that resonates beyond barriers, showing that music truly is a universal language. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
Spring temperatures are here ahead of the weekend. Tomorrow will be even warmer than today. Tomorrow, the daytime temperature in Seoul will rise to as high as 17 degrees Celsius. However, in the afternoon, rain will begin on the southern coast and Jeju Island. This rain will expand to various inland areas, such as the Seoul metropolitan area. After the rain, the temperature will drop due to gusty wind across the country, and fine dust is expected to be resolved as well. As the temperatures rise day after day, warm weather continues. However, as the daily temperature difference is as huge as 15 degrees, the day gets chilly soon after the sun sets. If you're outside until late, you should dress in layers. As for the air quality, bad levels of ultrafine dust will be seen tomorrow. As dusty winds continues, a protective mask is necessary this weekend. Tomorrow morning, Seoul and Daegu will start off at 5 degrees. Daytime temperature in Seoul will move up to 17, Daegu and Gyeongju 21 degrees. With rain forecast on Tuesday, relatively less mild temperatures are ahead. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Hope everyone has a great weekend and a good night.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.